Hello, everyone. We are going to record this, before we get started, I'd like to just introduce myself. My name is Jonathan, and I'll be your MC and admin, so I'm the one letting everyone in. If you have any questions, we'll just pop it in the chat or unmute yourself, but I'll hand everything over to Damien to get started.
Amazing. Yes. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us today. Super excited. And really, I can't wait to dive into assignments inside of Microsoft Teams. So now you may also follow along with us, as always, using the link over in or on the screen, which is right now, the CC /team assignments. So that will provide you access to the slide presentation, the deck that we are currently using right now, all for you. That is to keep. No one's planning on deleting this, so that should be always available to you. But yeah, let's kind of move forward. My name is Damien Milcharski. I am based in Toronto, Mississauga, Ontario, over on Treaty 13A. And I'm so fortunate to be here in front of all of you, teaching a little bit about Teams, about assignments, and all thanks to the wonderful Cobblestone Collective. John, did you want to introduce yourself again? We don't have to.
Sure. I'm Jonathan. I'm from Milton, Ontario, so just down the road from Damien on Treaty 19 here in Milton, Ontario.
Beautiful. Now, yeah, I don't know why I said Toronto first. Like, it's not like I want it. I don't know. I guess it's just easily recognizable, but it's Mississauga. I'm proud of where I'm from. But before we go forward, speaking of being proud of where I'm from, I did want to say a few words about the lands that we are on, and I want to acknowledge and remind everybody that the lands that we're on today do have beautiful history behind them, and our territorial lands from many different groups of Indigenous peoples across Canada. So I mentioned that I'm on Treaty 13A, which is the traditional territory of the Mississauga of the Credit people. And I'm so fortunate and thankful to be settled here, where I'm able to share my knowledge with you, teach and learn, and really just be able to be with all of you today. I like to usually say this little fact because I don't think it's very well known, but the Treaty 13A was one of the treaties that was part of a larger territory called the Dish with One Spoon. And so it very much acknowledged that the people of these lands were working together in cohesion to care for the land in a non-violent way, without conflict. So the dish representing the land and the spoon representing the people. And I find that pretty powerful. So if you are a little bit curious, or a lot of bit curious about the lands that you are on today, then you may go to native-land.ca, native-land.ca, and you can find out a little bit more about where you are from. Big thank you to the Cobblestone Collective for hosting this session for all of us today and providing the opportunity to learn a little bit more today about assignments inside of Microsoft Teams. And also a big thank you to Microsoft in Education. So we are a global training partner. We, Cobblestone Collective, are a global training partner with Microsoft in Education. And it is thanks to them that we are able to provide this for all of you free of charge, which is phenomenal. So thank you all for joining us today. We have a pretty simple template for today. We're going to create some assignments. We're going to talk about reading progress, and then we're also going to look at the student view and submissions and some grading and feedback as well. Before I go any further, I did just want to give a little teaser for the Microsoft Educator Center. I will jump into this a little bit later towards the end of the session, just so you may also, if you forget to do it now, get your code. But by participating in today's session, you're able to navigate to the education.microsoft.com link. And if you haven't created a profile, you can create your profile, put in today's code, which is up on the screen. And if you're joining us today live, John kindly put it in the chat, and then you will be able to get credit for the session that you have joined with us today. So I'll dive into this a little bit more towards the end, but I think right now it's time to start chewing on the meat of the presentation. So let's just dive right in on the content. So As always, I do like to give my disclaimer that I am going to be using the portal.office.com, so the web browser of Microsoft Office, just because this implies that everything I show is universally available for everyone that is joining us today, hence using a browser. So everything that I'm going to showcase, hopefully you can all access that just fine. If you're not familiar with how to get here, all I personally did, and this is just my personal favorite, I like to go to portal.office.com. So opening up any browser, type it in portal.office.com, and clicking enter will lead you to your login page. Because I'm logged in, that doesn't happen for me. I'm already logged in, but you just log in with your normal credentials that you normally do for work, for school, anything like that. So actually, this is a pretty refreshed look. For anyone that's might have been following longer, it looks different now, right? So it looks a little bit more clean. It mimics a lot Windows 11. So if you have any Windows users that are out there and just watching this, or even in the audience today, this kind of resembles Windows 11. But that's my little technological spiel in the beginning. So to access Teams that we are going to be navigating today, I have my panel on the left-hand side, and Teams is the wonderful purple icon over there. So when I click that, it'll open up a new tab. I guess I can just close my existing tab over there. It's going to open to the same spot, not a problem. And boom, we are in. So hopefully I'm not going too fast. And if I am, please let John know in the chat. I can slow down. Absolutely. I tend to speed up and slow down, and I'll try to be mindful of that just to make sure we can all take the content quite easily and readily available. Okay. So today I'm going to be working out of my class over here, the accessibility studies. So I'm going to select in here. And if you work in Teams pretty regularly, you'll likely already know this by now. However, the layout has changed slightly inside of a team, meaning that these four areas, so Insights is completely new, but class notebook, assignments, and the grades, they used to be tabs at the top inside of your general channel. So right now we're inside of our general channel, and these used to be tabs over on the top top side. But now they've moved over to the left-hand side over here. So they are divided by that. So if you are already familiar with Teams, this is likely just a bit of a refresher for you. But for some of us that might be just starting to use it, or maybe you're bored, changed domains and different things are happening, that is kind of the big change that you may have noticed over here. So this assignments tab, we'll go into this in just a moment. However, this is for the particular class. So if I go to all my teams, and for example, I go to Alex's class here, Alex has an assignment over here that is specific to this classroom, to this Alex Amazing Incredible. So for example, let's look at Halloween short story, right? We see Halloween short story. Going back to my accessibility studies and I click on assignments, it's different, right? Because obviously different class, different team means different assignments. So I have that Halloween assignment. All I have are these three right here. Now, this may not come as a surprise, but navigating individually between all of your teams might be a little bit cumbersome, right? And definitely is not universal in that sense or easy to access all of them at once. So what you're able to do is on the left-hand panel, very similar actually, by the way, to the portal home. See how everything is becoming uniform in the layout. We are going to go to the assignments tab on the left-hand side. And so this assignments tab is pretty new in terms of how they constructed it. And I mean the engineering team of Microsoft. So bear with me. Sometimes I go ahead, my mind thinks faster than I can speak, but how they designed it in the sense that we can view all of our assignments for all their classes, right? So here's that Halloween short story that we mentioned in Alex's class. We have my accessibility studies class with all these different assignments, and everything is very well laid out in front of us. So there are a few different tabs. It automatically will always stay on the assigned, right? Which means that these are things that I have created and might be upcoming, might have already passed, but they were assigned by myself to my students. The return tab over here are basically, when I jump into it, I can see all the completed assignments that students have already returned, right? So in this case, we have reading number 1, grade 5, and my student, Kenny, has returned it. So that is under the return tab. And drafts are when I'm creating a new assignment, maybe haven't finished it yet. Maybe I exited and I just wanted to create it ahead of time and have that idea, but I haven't published it yet. These are where we are able to find the drafts right here. So we have those 3 tabs. Now, we may also individually select different classes. So by default, we have all of our classes laid out in front of us, right? So I have a Mars Geometric Gardens class. I have Alex's class over here, my accessibility class. We have a ton of different things. So I can specify a specific class as well that I wanted to be able to look into. So navigating back to accessibility studies, this is now returning back to had I just individually gone team by team, assignment by assignment. This is just a more uniform approach, right? Everything is in one spot, and we're able to get a quick overview or top-down level kind of approach and view for our assignments. So I'm able to always shift between that, right? I can go ahead, I can select the different classes, and let's say I have completed, right? And you'd be surprised actually how many times I once forgot, or I was like, how do I get back to all my classes now? Pretty simply, all you need to do is click this clear button at the top right. Actually, let me zoom in a little bit. It might be a tad hard to see. So this clear button right over here will clear whatever specific class I selected, and will go back to all my classes. Okay, so that is kind of like a very quick top level overview of assignments, how it's changed or adapted slightly over, I guess, part of the past year now, right? Like this was pretty much new for this upcoming school year back in like August, I believe. So that's kind of the overview of assignments. Now, we're going to go and talk about creating assignments, right? And if you're following along in our slide, essentially what we just covered is the new layout. So we talked about all of these different tabs and drop-down menus, and we are about to talk about this. So we're going to create a new assignment. We're going to get to these 2 slides because these are new, so we're going to spend some time on that. But mostly, if you are following along on the presentation deck, then you're able, or it essentially just go to this creating assignments, and then we're going to walk through and order all of these, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. Actually, I'll leave it back there so I don't lose myself to the music. Okay, little Super Bowl joke. I don't know if you got it or not, but all right, cool. So let's start a new assignment. We're going to create one. Now, in the slide deck that is provided to all of you, the picture does show me being in this specific class. So I went to the assignments and I created one from here. But to diversify it a little bit, we're actually going to create it from the assignments tab. So we're going to kind of live and breathe today out of this specific assignments area. Cool. So at the bottom left-hand corner, there is a purple create button. I think they actually changed the purple color, if I'm not mistaken. It looks a little different for me, a little bit more bright. And when I click on this create, I have 3 options. I can create from an existing template that I've used in the past. So if I've already created an assignment and I want to use a similar one, I can go ahead and click that. And so by clicking that, it will essentially ask me to choose a class from which I want to reuse that assignment from, and I can select it right here. So I know a very popular question that comes up is, well, I've already done this assignment before. Can I just do it again? Yes, you can. And this is the way that you'd be able to do that. So you can even filter it. If you have a lot of assignments, you can even filter it by due date. So you get either the most recent one or one that's a little bit older. But that is how you might be able to reuse the hard work that you've already put in and just apply it to a different set of classes or classmates. Navigating back to create, we have 2 options. We can create quizzes, which I can talk about, and if we have time, I can dive into that as well. That's not an issue. But for the sake of today's presentation, we'll kind of chow down on the assignment portion. So I'm going to select assignment, and because I am creating this from the broad general assignments tab, I now select which class I'm creating it for. So a little bit different, contrary to being in that individual class and creating from there. I'm able to just select all that right from one spot. So this is kind of my class. I'm going to select that, and it will take us to this setup page. Cool. So I am going to create two different assignments today. One, I'm going to showcase a newer feature in assignments called Reading Progress. And it's super cool. I actually can't wait to show you that. So we're going to use Reading Progress as our first one, and then we're going to follow up and use it and create, a group assignment as like a follow-up to the Reading Progress, because there are a couple things I want to showcase for individually and with group assignments. So let's begin with our title. So I think for today's title, we're probably going to use the same thing, the Osprey, or just reading activity number 3. So we have our title. Should you want to, you can add tags or categories specifically. So you can create a new category. I do have special ed already here, but maybe if I wanted to make literature, for example, as a new tag, I can do that, and it'll just help me filter the different topics that I am creating. So we've got reading activity number 3. Now, under instructions, there are a couple of things. I want to do a reading progress, right? So that is through kind of an additional submenu. If you are just creating a normal kind of assignment, which I'll cover again in the group assignment, such as attaching like a Word document or a template that students can work on, then you would either create a new one or attach it from an existing source. And then you would input your instructions regarding that assignment directly. Now, because we're doing a reading progress, which is a tad differently, then I'm going to click this attach button right over here. And we may notice that there is OneDrive, there's class notebook. So I'm attaching essentially files that exist in these areas. So that exists in OneDrive or inside of my class notebook already, inside of MakeCode or Teams. And at the very, very bottom, we have reading progress. And I'm going to choose that. And it does something different, right? Normally, if you had chosen a file or a document to upload, boom, it uploads and you carry on kind of filing down. But this is a little bit differently, because now we have two options. We can either import, similarly, a document we have already created, or browse the sample library. So I'm going to quickly show both, because there are a couple benefits and features for doing one or the other. So if I import a Word or document, then I have my options of OneDrive or Teams. I'm just going to go from this computer right now, and we're going to do the Osprey. Now, this is a primary level, so I understand that, but just for visualization and just for an example, we have the Osprey here. So this is going to be my reading assignment number 3. Now, I can enter the reading level over here, right? So if I want to keep it simple, maybe I can do 5, but I can also do like the K560. The genre this is fiction. And a number of attempts. So I would generally prefer to give a chance for my students to try it. And so the number of attempts essentially means that when a student goes to actually read the passage, how many times can they do it again, right? So maybe they were a bit nervous the first time and it didn't come out exactly how they would normally articulate it. That's okay. You have 2 more tries to gain that, gain that self-advocacy, that confidence, and try it again once more. So I'm going to give maybe 3 attempts, no time limit essentially, and the default sensitivity for pronunciation. Okay, so with that being said, I also want to limit my video. So I'm actually going to turn that off, mostly because in this scenario, I understand that my students are using mobile. So mobile currently doesn't support audio recordings or video recordings, right? So that's something video recordings. So that's something to be mindful for. What's neat about uploading my own document is that, for example, I can edit this passage. So I have 2 titles here because I didn't realize that the title of my document would be the title here. right? So I can actually edit what I've already created ahead of time, even if it was a PDF. And now it's a little bit more clean for my students and be able to access that. And before clicking next, I can check that student view for the reading assignment. So, I would say use my microphone. I'm just going to block that just because it's going to interfere with the teams. But then I can also use my camera just to see how that would work and click start, and it will allow me to essentially practice or just view it from the student perspective, how to do it. So that is a pretty powerful way that we're able to make sure that what we are offering for students to test the material on is exactly how we want it. I'm going to choose.
Before.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt. Before you get there, I had a question around the reading level. Did you make that number up, or where did that number come from? Because I think that might be something that some of the teachers may want to figure out.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll showcase where that comes from in this next part. Great.
Awesome.
I love it. We always speak the same wavelength. Okay, so I'm going to choose a new passage, and it takes us back to this menu. So there's actually now a sample library, right? And this is pretty phenomenal. So we are able to select our grade level, whether it is a K-6 or a secondary level. So we used a primary kind of level, the Osprey, earlier. So maybe I'll just choose this secondary level, and then that Lexile level. That's what I was kind of going at, right? So I put the letter in the wrong spot, but the Lexile level was where I kind of put that K from. So it's really great because this sample library offers already all of that and in different genres. So we can filter these different ways and even preview these assignments. So maybe if I looked at everyday energy, I can preview, and yeah, that looks pretty good. Or maybe I want something that has a little bit less words, and I want to say aloha. Yeah, this looks good. I'm going to select that. Notice, because this is a pre-created passage, I can't edit this one. So you are able to edit your own documents that you upload, however, not the ones that are selected from the sample library. But I still have the options of doing different attempts, whether I want to require video or not, and the sensitivity for pronunciation. So once I'm content, I'm going to click next. And boom, I have my reading passage right over here. So notice that I still haven't exactly put instructions, right? All I've added was the actual assignment they need to do. So I might type in, please read this passage to the best of your ability. Phenomenal. Okay, and so now we have titled our assignments, we have provided instructions and chosen our reading progress passage. It is time to put in a rubric. So I will navigate down to this add rubric over here, and I can either add a brand new rubric, which will allow me to create one from scratch. So I can put in the title. I can quickly add additional rows or columns and just basically type in here, pour 1, 2. And I can just customize that right from here. I mean, I'm not going to use that because I want to also showcase how we can use a pre-created rubric. So I have here a reading progress rubric. Granted, this was created for the Osprey, so it might not actually exactly pan out to the secondary level I chose, but that's okay, because when I click next, despite me creating this rubric ahead of time, I can still dive in here and edit it. So maybe I want to increase the percentage or the points to a different level. Maybe I want to adopt this. So maybe a pour no attempts. I can go ahead and copy that. And I can essentially customize my rubric. So despite me creating one earlier, I am able to create this, navigate through it, change it to my will, and then go ahead and attach it. So I'm confident with that, and we will attach it. And right here, we are able to notice that this reading progress rubric is attached on the right-hand side. I will change the points to 20 just for this. And so now what's next is that we want to assign it to our students. And this is where some of those new features come in. So as we mentioned earlier, right, with these two features, this is what we're gonna focus on right now. And so essentially, I am able to assign this to this specific class, okay? And maybe I want to do it to all my students. So this is where you can choose to do groups of students. And remember, we're going to do 2 assignments. So we'll return back and create a group project. However, right now, I think we want to do all students. So I'm content with that. Now, the due date for this is currently set for tomorrow at midnight. Now, I can click this little calendar icon inside of that text bar and maybe push it out to February 25th, but the time seems right. What is super cool, and this can be edited at any time, is that now you are able to plan out your assignments and when they release. So by clicking this edit button right underneath the due date, I can actually assign or schedule to assign these assignments in the future. So if I have a high level of executive functioning, or just I really like to have everything created and prepared, I can do all this in the first month of my class, my teaching, or even the first few weeks if I so chose, and decide at which dates I will have these assignments be assigned or scheduled. So I can do the posting date, so it will post on the 21st, for example, and then the due date would be the 25th. So students would then have one day to do it. I can also edit if if let's say something comes up or anything happens, I can provide extensions, so I can edit that time for when it actually closes. So I will see that it was submitted late, and if I wanted to deduce marks or deduct marks from that, that's up to you, right? You're best your students, but that option is available in that edit function under the assignments, under the due dates. So all of that is readily available for you now. I don't need to schedule that in the future. I'm pretty okay, so I'm going to cancel that. I'm confident just scheduling it out now. And the last thing that I wanted to touch on over here is that we can even add this directly to our student calendars or to anybody, right? So we have 3 options. We have students only, students and myself, so I as the educator, and team owners. So team owners just essentially means that if someone else has the same level of privilege, ownership, of your class, right? So maybe you have another coworker, or if you're going to be leaving in the future on leave or anything like that, and they need that kind of priority team owner access, then it would also be placed into their calendar as well. So I do have that option to be able to select inputting that directly into student calendars, because at the end of the day, again, we might be helping other students, even on an accessibility kind of conversation with that executive functioning, putting that in, helping them with those reminders, and making sure that their assignments will be submitted. So we're pretty content, I think, and we're going to click assign. And now I have over here my reading activity number 3 under my assigned tab. Okay, so I will go back to my assignments. Oh, actually, I'm already there. And I got a little notification. That is great. And when I click on that assignment now, I can see, or I can observe, that all of the students right now they have yet to complete it, right? They have yet to go in and actually use the reading. Sorry, it's actually, I'm missing it out. Reading progress, that's it. So they have yet to go in, use the reading progress, and kind of leverage that as well. But from here, this is our kind of top level view as an educator, right? So I'm able to see who returned it and who has yet to return by clicking that individual assignment. So the status will change to turning in if they've already turned it in, and being able to kind of work with that. And also, we're able to provide feedback. But this ellipsis at the top side allows us to do the student view that I mentioned earlier. So when I select student view, imagine that I am a student. This is what the assignment will look like to me, right? So I have the instructions. Please read this passage carefully. The student work is displayed right here, which means all the student needs to do is click on this and it will begin their assessment, or it will, like that is their copy. And what's best about this is that it is individual for each student. So once one student clicks on this, that is their respective work. They're not reading a passage or reading over someone else's work. This is all individual for the student. So they have the rubric here that they can click, and they can see how much everything is weighed or valued. And maybe once they're feeling comfortable, then they can click on this and proceed to do their reading progress. There is also Immersive Reader built up in the top right-hand side over here. So if you're unfamiliar with that, I'll just very quickly showcase it, but I won't dive too deep, or I won't really dive into it, unfortunately, too much right now, just because for the sake of time. But Immersive Reader is built in if you are familiar, so we are able to assist our students that might have reading disabilities or such as dyslexia in order to improve their reading as well. So with that being said, this is the student view. We can always go back, and then once we go back, we return back to our educator view, right? Us as a teacher, we're able to see everything and then kind of work with that. Okay,
Damien, there's a question in the chat. Can students upload videos? So they have a student that uses American Sign Language.
That's actually a pretty good question. So inside of the reading progress per se, there is only one video that you can do. So let me see if I can do this reading progress over here. Let me turn off my camera and see if this camera opens up.
Yeah, you might also turn on your microphone.
No, I think because I said no earlier, so I would have to go into the web browser settings. But in reading progress, I don't believe that option to have two videos, because the video essentially, if you toggle it on, is for the student. So maybe they can add the interpreter in the video, right? And so the interpreter is doing the video, if possible. But for reading progress, it's just the one video that's embedded in the actual assignment. Inside of other,
if they themselves use sign language, they can videotape themselves, right? That way the video, they don't need an interpreter. If they use sign language,
okay,
they should be. Is that how, I may be asking the wrong question in here. So if I'm not,
yeah. So it's the student. The student is deaf, and so they are signing, and so they would respond with using their hands. So sometimes it's not a feature, so I was just asking, but that would be more of a Microsoft question. So
sorry, and thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, so absolutely. So you can definitely have the students complete the assignment using sign language. That is not a problem. I think the one thing to be mindful for is when you will be marking it. So let me show you what that would look like on the back end. And essentially, you would just ignore the AI prompts, if that makes sense, right? Because it wouldn't be detecting any audio.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The AI wouldn't read what they're saying, but you would just watch and you would read the sign language.
I'll show what that means. I think it's a little frozen, so I was waiting for it to clear up. But let me show you what that means. So essentially, if I go into assignments, I'll go into load previous. I think we did do this before. I had someone return it. So when we are marking reading progress, this is what it will look like from an educator's perspective. So essentially, auto detect, right? That was that default and high and medium, default, high, and low that we were initially doing. So auto detect essentially listens for voice, and if a student mispronounces or omits, or essentially these 5 categories, that's what the auto detect is doing. With that said, and I realized I did not share audio, but when I click on the play button, it will read out each individual word. It will read out what the student had recorded, and then you, as the teacher, you can select each word and then be able to still manually correct that or edit it. Or jump to it even. So while we're here, when we are marking work, so in this case, the reading progress, as I mentioned, actually, John, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to reshare with audio just so we can have that kind of full experience. So just
yeah, it's awesome.
Bear with me here. Okay. Cool. So you should have audio. So I'm going to go ahead and play this from the beginning, and then we'll kind of work through these first couple sentences together.
The osprey is not as large as the eagle, but he has a hawked bill and sharp claws like the eagle.
Cool. So essentially, so far, the auto-detect was correct. Two pronunciations. One was eagle instead of eagle and hawked instead of hooked. So this is correct. Now, occasionally, AI, artificial intelligence, is not always not always correct. So us as the educator, we can go in and actually just, take that off. Mark is correct. There we go. So instead of it automatically being marked as a mispronunciation, I can just take that off. Or also on the flip side, right? If maybe the artificial intelligence hadn't picked up a certain word, then I'm able to manually go in and change that word. Now, one great cool feature is because of the reading progress, I don't have to click play and restart from the beginning. I can always select a word and jump to the word.
The osprey is often found.
And that way I can move down my assignment as I'm marking. And what's really great when you're marking work inside of Teams is notice this rubric on the right-hand side. That's the rubric that I uploaded, that I posted. So that means that I can open up this rubric and I am now navigating through, I'm scrolling through everything that I wrote out. So as I'm inside of this assignment, I can grade them. So the 1 point, the 2, the 3, the 4, and enter feedback under each column or row as well. So once I'm good with volume, I will click next. This is already returned, so I'm not going to change the marks here, but I can go ahead, maybe put 1 and go back to 2, perfect, and add a feedback. I can now navigate over to my fluency and mark in that sense. So everything is all in one spot, which is phenomenal because that's the idea, right? We want to contain everything as easily and accessible as possible without having to jump to different screens and navigate in that sense. So once we're done, then because this is already returned, I can't return it right now. However, this option would be highlighted in purple where I can return, or I can return for revision. So essentially, I could return it for marks. This is the final grade, the final attempt, or I can provide it back to the student, be like, hey, you did pretty good, but let's try to tweak it a little bit more. You get another chance to do better, right? Or maybe you were nervous and this is your first time. Let's try it again, right? And the 3 attempts wasn't enough. So there's always ways that we can still promote and support the educational growth of our students. So that was kind of the reading progress specifically. So it's great. I can see the status here was returned as opposed to simply not turned in, right? And I have this outline over here, 15 out of 20. And so the date that this was returned as a check mark. So that's kind of the reading progress. And we can go into depth about specifically doing reading progress and going very, very slowly with that. But that's a whole other kind of ballpark right over there. So let's go back to creating, I believe it was, we're going to create a new assignment. So navigating back, we're going to create a new assignment. And I'm going to click my class. So with the Earth, the accessibility studies. And so to make it a reading progress assignment, you specifically require the attach button over under the instructions. So this attach button right over here, and then reading progress is at the very bottom. And so once you select reading progress, it will prompt you to either upload or choose a passage from the sample library. And then it gets tagged of its own. It will say like reading assignment, right? And the title. So that's how you would make it a specific reading assignment. Now, you also brought up apps, which is great because apps are basically, this is actually a newer feature too. But essentially what you're able to do is if you use other popular educational tools, so what we have in front of us right now, most recent is Flipgrid, right? So if you have already been using or want to use Flipgrid, for example, as a way, because I think you also brought up, video, using video for students to communicate, then this is a phenomenal tool to do that. So students can then navigate through Flipgrid, complete their assignment using Flipgrid, using video, and then that is kind of their way of submission as well. So that's how you would integrate the app into your assignment all in one spot. So it's 5:15. Let us create one more group assignment, and then I'll show you a little bit about the Microsoft Educator community, how you can redeem that code. And if there are any follow-up questions towards the end, then we can do that as well. So let's do group assignments. Reading progress. Reading progress essay. Let's do that. So essentially, I'm just doing a follow-up assignment to my reading progress. So it was kind of like a two-part assignment in this hypothetical scenario where students had the reading progress, they completed it, phenomenal. Now let's do an essay regarding the passage that you just wrote. And so with that being said, is very similarly to what we already mentioned earlier, I would kind of go through the same beats, through the same patterns. So I would attach a rubric if I made one, so upload from this device, or maybe not even a rubric, but I can upload a document. So if I created a document ahead of time for students to be able to edit, then they are able to just click it and start editing away. Similarly to how we were able to just click reading progress and they begin their assignment, the same thing over here. So I can still add my instructions in the top. Please open and complete the provided document. Perfect. So I can still open the documents from here as well, just to make sure I have the correct one. So I'm just using the same one. It's the reading passage, I understand. But obviously, when you create your own, either worksheets or anything related, then that's what it would be. It's whatever you upload. So similarly, I can add a rubric. So I have an essays rubric here. I don't think it was very populated. I didn't make it, but yeah. So it was. I think we just made a pretty brief, pretty basic rubric here. But again, it speaks to us being able to edit this, right? So maybe I'll fix that. Maybe I'll go ahead and students.
This is why I often make like a 2-point rubric, right? A met, not met. So that way, it not only does it save time for you as a teacher, but the students, meeting expectations, not meeting expectations are a lot easier to self-assess and take a look at things. So what I do love about Teams is that you can create your own rubrics while you're doing it, or upload ones that have already been created.
Yeah, no, and that's a phenomenal point. Absolutely. Yeah, okay, so we've uploaded our rubric. We have our points. We are assigning it to the same class. We don't want to assign it in the future, but we know that it exists, so that is super great. And now, instead of just doing all the students, we are going to choose that option and scroll down to groups of students. And we get a new, let's call it a pop-up, for lack of a better term. It's not a pop-up, it's safe. But essentially, you get this new menu, and you can either randomly group students together, or you can manually group them. So if they created their groups ahead of time, then you can just organize that manually, or just randomize it to save a little bit more time there. But I'm going to manually group some students, and automatically I've grouped one. Again, if students decided to personalize it a little bit and add their group name, this is where you can change that. So you have those options available to you. But I'm going to select Al and Sophia and click create. So I have group one with Al and Sophia. I'm going to click a new group, which will automatically be group two. I'm going to add Susanna and Adele. And maybe in this case, Alex requested to work alone. So we're just going to create group three with just Alex, which is totally fine. So once I'm done, I have all of my my students inside of their groups. Everything else was the same, right? We're able to complete, and you know, we want to add it right now into their calendars. So I'm going to click assign. And now I have a group assignment. So I'm going to click on this. It's still loading a little bit just because it has to upload to the SharePoint, has to come back down. And notice now it looks a little bit different, right? It's not just all the students blocked in a single line. It is divided by group. I actually really like, I prefer this a lot more. It's very, very organized. It's very nice. But essentially, similarly to any other assignment, if I select the ellipsis at the top right, I can do student view. And I've realized now that I made a mistake, right? So instead of actually putting this document as work for student to just click and begin, I used it as a reference material. So what I want to do is I want to edit that, right? And I also realized it's due tomorrow. I also made a mistake. So by clicking that ellipsis, I can edit that assignment at any time. So when I edit this assignment, I want to change that due date to maybe a week after the reading progress. And the reason why it's selected as a reference is because right under here, it says students cannot edit. Let me zoom in a little bit just to maybe showcase that. So students can edit. Therefore, whenever a document says that students cannot edit, it will automatically be assumed that it is a reference material or a guide or kind of like a rubric, anything like that. To change that, under this specific document, I will select the ellipsis and students edit together in groups. And I'm just going to change that. So I think I'm good with that now. If I update that, we are back inside of the reading progress and under student view, perfect. It worked well. The Osprey is now under student work, which means that a student or sorry, a group can select that and begin editing right away. And so that way I have reference to all of that. I can see group progress over time, who has contributed, who hasn't, for participation marks. There's a load of options that we have here. Lastly, when we are talking about marking, we have groups here, right? So I can select, you know, this one group. I can even select multiple groups or even multiple. So if I had an individual assignment, I can select multiple people and I could return, right? So I can return this assignment back to them or return for revision. So once maybe you mark everything first, you can then select everybody and return it all at once instead of students getting their individual marks one at a time and someone gets it earlier or later. So that's one way that you can kind of, executively function that. But you can also decide if you wanted to mark as a group or per individual of the group. So that is done through the ellipsis of each group. So under group one, there is an ellipsis at the far right. So in this case, we only have 3 of them for 3 groups. And when I click on that ellipsis, it gives me an option to grade students individually. So if I select that, it means that now I see that, you know, group one, whether they submitted it or not, but then I can add my individual feedback. So if I open it up, you know, let's say they edited this. This is their document. I select which student. So there we go. I select Al, for example. I will open up essays and I'll begin to mark their work right within the document, which is super great. Alternatively, I can grade students as a group and do the exact same function. So all the students in the group are Al and Owen, or sorry, Sophia and Al, and same thing, I can go ahead, open up my rubric, begin marking, put in some feedback, and then once we are ready to go, we would return for either return or return for revision. So hopefully that kind of talks a little bit about everything. You know, we mentioned about reading progress, creating assignments, creating group assignments, marking, and student view. There was a lot of content covered today. So, you know, I always do that. But essentially, these last 2 slides under the additional tips, this just demonstrates what that student view would look like. And also, it just showcases how you can mark or grade students individually inside of a team's assignment. So, you know, with that being said, I think I think that's it. I'll spend some time showing you how you can redeem that quota that you have, because you spent an hour with us, right? You deserve that recognition, absolutely. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to steal the code from John, and I'm going to open up a brand new browser. Let's not restore. I will figure out what I missed out on. And essentially what we can do is we can go to education.microsoft.com. And so this is a global platform for all teachers and students and really anybody regarding Microsoft products. So we're able to take some courses, or in this case, partake in a workshop such as this, and then navigate over to the Educator, the Microsoft Educator Center. If you ever hear the word MEC inside of one of these workshops, that's the acronym. That's what it means. If I were to APA reference that. But essentially, I would navigate over to the sign-in, and I would sign in using my my email. So this looks good. Found my email somehow. A little creepy. And here we are now, logged in. If you've never created an account before, I would recommend creating a personal account. That is just my professional kind of, well, it's personal, I guess, but that's my recommendation, just because if you are transitioning, if you are moving, if you're going elsewhere in your careers and your ambitions, and just anything happens, you can take your accomplishments with you, right? And that's crucial and important, because you deserve it. You invested the time to learn this. So it's a pretty simple layout. We go to my profile where we can see all of our codes, but we can also just redeem the achievement code. So using the code that John just gave, I can paste that in here, click redeem, boom, and you just completed the following training, right? So I've also received this Learn badge, which is pretty cool. I don't think I've had that before. And when I select my profile at the top right, and I click my profile, this is it right here. Assign and assess learners with assignments and forms and teams. And I got my little badge. So I can view the details of that specific certificate. Essentially, in the case, I can share it if I wanted to. I can view the certificate itself. Right, so that's what it looks like. If you wanted to demonstrate that a little bit, like it looks pretty cool. And you can also click the view module, which will take you to the specific, essentially what we just covered today in a nutshell. You're always more than welcome to still go back and review this or look at it in your own time. That's completely up to you. But then lastly is transcript. So you can view your entire transcript, which is super powerful because it will tell you the duration. So we went ahead and gave you a little extra 0.5, right? But again, it's valued, right? It's warranted, because that's the time you'd invest with us, listening to us, and being able to essentially learn a little bit on your own as well. So it all works out in the end. But that is how you'd be able to use that badge. So I would highly recommend being able to do that. But I've talked enough for today. If you do follow along through the recording, we did add some additional resources. So just find the presentation deck, and it is right here. This is what we just talked about. And lastly, if you have any feedback you can give us, we would super appreciate it. I'd always love to learn how we can do better to support you. And if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to email help@cobblestonecollective.ca.